Good morning, everyone. I have the honor of saying good morning to you all and of introducing Sir Mark Thompson, our first speaker for opening remarks. Mark is the chairman, CEO, and editor-in-chief of CNN, and today he is also the co-chair of the International Fund for Public Interest Media. Please, Mark.
Okay, I'm going to speak quite loudly. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And I just want to say how pleased and honoured I am to be opening this second day with a discussion focusing on some of the practical questions around the urgent need to sustain information integrity and independent media. An issue which I guess many people will already know here is an issue which can touch on every aspect of our societies: global health, climate, economics, peace, security, and much more. Yesterday was a really big day for the future of independent media. Here at the Paris Peace Forum, at a conference co-organised by the International Fund for Public Interest Media and Forum on Information and Democracy, 29 countries, representing many parts of the world, 29 countries affirm their commitment to sustaining news media and building stronger collective action to safeguard reliable information at a time when it's never been under so much threat. So thank you to all those countries that came together, and to the 5 heads of state and government, President Macron, President Mahama, President Sandhu, Prime Minister Rama, and Prime Minister Pashinyan, that gave compelling remarks to explain why they signed up to the commitment. And thank you also to the Paris Peace Forum, which is where IFPIM started as an idea a few years ago, and which has been a really reliable partner to IFPIM through its journey so far. We at IFPIM and the Forum share a fundamental goal of building new coalitions and reinventing multilateralism. And what I hope about tomorrow, what I took from yesterday, is that we have the real chance of moving beyond speeches, fine words, to actual actions, and that we'll do that because of this new recognition that reliable information is a public good, is essential for healthy societies and healthy democracies, and needs to be funded and supported on that basis. And be under no illusion, we are in a real battle here. And it's a battle which is currently being lost in most countries. My day job, as Amelie said, I run the international news organisation CNN. Before that, I ran the New York Times and the BBC. I want to say every day in my working life, I can feel this battle raging. It comes up every day. I talk to my friends in other international news organisations and domestic media in many countries. I've got contacts in many, many countries around the world. And by the way, not just the first world, but around the world. And with IFPIM, I see it. It's happening everywhere. And we are losing at the moment. By which I mean, I don't just mean that media's losing. I mean, that's part of the story. The public are losing. Citizens are losing. There are many parts of the world where access to free information is almost gone, or gone completely. The surprise over the last few years has been how it was easy maybe a decade or two ago to think of this as a problem which was a developing world problem, or a problem where there were traditions of non-democracy. What we see today is it is creeping into every developed world as well. And the battle against it has got many different qualities in different parts of the world. The common thread is that the enemies of truthful information are gaining strength, and in particular are being successful in exploiting distribution through digital platforms which manifestly are doing too little to help people discriminate between what's true and what's not true, what is wholesome and what is dangerous and damaging, and are either doing too little or doing nothing at all, or actively adding harm by the way their platforms and technologies are developing. I see this as a set of interlocking threats. The threats are political and cultural, a turn away from truth-based policymaking and truth-based political debate towards narrative-based, ethnic or nationalist-based narratives which are self-serving politically, but which mislead people about everything from climate change to vaccines and so much more. There are economic problems. The disruption of digital means that you have the politicians and hostile interests in your country potentially ranged against you, but also you're under an economic crisis. And as I say, this is in the backdrop of a technology environment which is not naturally biased in favor of accuracy or truth, but on the contrary, either wants to say it's not our job to decide what's true and what's not true, or indeed actively, it would appear, generally trying to incite, because of the eagerness for engagement, the most dramatic, the most extreme, and indeed, in some ways, the most engaging falsehoods to try and drive their businesses. As my co-chair, Maria Reza, the great, heroic Filipino editor, entrepreneur, Nobel Peace Prize winner on the side, and vocal advocate on this topic, as Maria puts it, our shared reality is collapsing. And without this shared reality, this fundamental agreement about what is true, what we share, what we can do together, we can't begin to solve the other existential problems which are addressed here at the Paris Peace Forum. This is why I'm so proud to have the role of co-chair of the International Fund for Public Interest Media. And let me tell you a bit about what that is. IFPIM is a new multilateral funding mechanism that's working across pretty much every continent. I'm not sure we've yet active in Antarctica, but we are pretty much around the world and in many different settings, trying in a very practical test and learn way to make a difference. And the difference we're trying to make is to try and begin to build the sustainability and the survivability of independent media, and to find models that work. We haven't started this thinking we know in advance the perfect model which we're just going to apply. And we also think the solutions are going to be found in countries by individual entrepreneurs, individual reporters and journalists, in their own language, in their own culture, knowing their own audiences, and finding out what works. And we're there not to tell them what to do, but to give them the means to find out for themselves what's going to work. We've only been going 3 years. The idea was first announced at this forum a few years ago. We've been going 3 years. In that time, we think we've achieved a lot. We've funded over 120 media outlets in about 30 countries so far. We want to do more. If we had more funding, we could do more. We've been trying to help them to evolve and to keep audiences and reach new audiences with fact-based news. So we're trying to, in the end, to build their ability, despite all of these challenges, to build their audiences, and by building their audiences, not only do good for society, but also to build their businesses and build the sustainability of the journalism. We've launched several structural initiatives, including new journalism financing funds in Brazil and South Africa, and the Global Media Trust announced at the Paris AI Summit which is an initiative to promote linguistic diversity and fair compensation for media content specifically used in AI models. And the data suggests that our grant-making model is genuinely working. Flexible core funding is allowing media organizations across the world to grow their audiences, to evolve their business, to increase revenues, to use technology to adapt to the evolving trends in how people consume news, how they access information, and above all, how they maintain editorial independence from government and from other powerful interests in their coverage. 93% of our grantees report major improvements to financial sustainability. 88% of grants say they increase their audiences, which is bucking a general trend for this kind of journalism to actually lose audiences. So we're seeing that turning round where we're able to intervene. And we heard several of the speakers yesterday talking specifically about their belief in for example, in Moldova, the belief of the direct connection between IFPIM involvement and democracy, the preservation and strengthening of democracy. We're now entering our new phase, really started yesterday. We're trying to raise $150 million new dollars of funding over the next 3 years to continue and to expand the work of IFPIM. And I would ask everyone here who has influence to join us in this fight. I want to give some thanks now. Thanks in particular to President Macron for his political and financial support of IFPIM, his vision for it, which has been foundational for us over the last few years. Thank you to President Mahama. We're so honored that Ghana will be the first African nation to make a financial contribution to IFPIM. Yesterday, we also heard that Spain and Luxembourg have now confirmed they're also going to begin to fund IFPIM from next year. And we're hoping that the current momentum we've got is going to add to more engagement with governments and other foundations, and therefore more funding, and therefore more good in the world. We're demonstrating, we believe, that a more multilateral, collective, strategic and long-term response may be possible and can work really well. And if we're successful in raising this new funding, we believe we can continue to play a bigger, major role in turning this crisis around. And I just want to say to you, this battle is going to be won by a lot of people putting their shoulder to the wheel and getting behind it. And I would say, I can't believe there's anyone who's taken the trouble to come to this forum who can't play some part in helping us. So thank you for your support. And let us hope we have a great conversation today. I want to hand over now to Camille Grenier, who heads the Forum on Information and Democracy, to share some of his thoughts on the future of our information space and why we need to continue to strengthen multilateral and multi-stakeholder action. Thank you, and please welcome Camille. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear friends, thank you very much. Thank you, Mark, for all of those remarks. I would like to begin by thanking all of the partners who have made it possible for us to come together here today, the team from the Forum on Information and Democracy, the International Fund for Public Interest in Media, and all of the teams, Pierrick Julio, whom I've had the pleasure of working with over the last 6 months to organize this forum. I'd also like to thank the team of the forum. This is my 8th edition, and it is brilliant to come together to have these discussions, but also to discuss action, coalitions and deliverables. I would also like to thank the team of the Ministry for Europe and Foreign Affairs, with whom I had the pleasure of working and have done for the last few years. And for the first edition of the Forum on Information and Democracy, we had the declaration. and we continue fighting to build ecosystems that are democratic. We are fighting to ensure that technology bears these principles of transparency, neutrality, pluralism, and we are doing so with limited resources, and sometimes we have to carry this fight with our bare hands. And today, I say with some emotion that we were right not to give up. We are right to continue these efforts because it pays dividends. And for those who were with us yesterday and followed our debate, I think that the political language used by the President of the Republic and the ministers that we heard from yesterday were very strong words. And I think that we have unlocked a number of things over the last 2 days. And as the President of the Republic was saying, we must ramp things up. And I think that with everything that we announced yesterday, we are absolutely able to do so. I would like to say that despite the efforts that we have undertaken, there have been some mishaps in terms of the organization, and I'd like to take this opportunity to apologize on behalf of the partners who were not able to be with us here today. Once again, it was a very important moment for us, and we hope that we will be able to correct course over the upcoming months and years. As I said, we were right not to give up. We had a very strong political will yesterday, and for us it was very important at the Forum on Information and Democracy to have a series of deliverables. We work on substance and public policy recommendation, but we also work on creating coalitions of action. And yesterday, we announced the creation of a coordination group which brings together international organizations and multilateral initiatives. And I'm very pleased to announce that the fund is already part of that group. And we have the Council of Europe, the OSCE, the Francophonie International Organization, and the United Nations, UNESCO. And this group will endeavor to work together to better coordinate their efforts, but also to strengthen their impact. Now, as it relates to the Forum on Information and Democracy, we created a select group that will help us better define our agenda and our priorities. And as part of this group, we have Brazil, Chile, France, Luxembourg, Portugal, and Ukraine. And I would like to thank all of the states who have joined us, and in particular, Luxembourg. Dear Luc, thank you very much for that financial contribution, which will help us at a time which is very challenging, so that we may continue our efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, today I would like to talk about information integrity, which is a very recent concept, and as it is presented, sometimes it's a big tent that enables us to talk about press and media freedom, but also internet governance, the protection of private data, and the regulation of digital platforms. And today we're going to take this umbrella concept, if you will, and we're going to discuss two themes. The first, information integrity on climate change, and I'm going to ask my dear panelists to join me on stage in a moment, and then also information integrity in the age of AI. So Rebecca Mackinnon, if Laurence Tubiana, and Kim Younes, if you'd like to join me on stage. Thank you very much and welcome. I hope that everyone can hear us. I'm extremely pleased to be with you here this morning for this discussion on information integrity and climate change with Laurence Tubiana, who is Chief Executive Officer of the European Climate Foundation, Kim Younes, CEO of TV5monde, and Rebecca Mackinnon, Special Advisor, Global Advocacy, Wikimedia Foundation.
There is live translation, so you can speak in the language where you're most comfortable with. La première question pour moi, c'est qu'on
The first
voit,
question for
et
me
on a
is that
notamment vu
we
en France
observe, and
ces
we've seen in
dernières
France in
semaines qu'il y
particular
a
over the last few
toute une
weeks,
série
that there
d'évidences, toute une
are
série de preuves
a
sur
series
la montée en
of
puissance
proof
de la
and evidence as
désinformation
it relates to
climatique, et on
the
voit à la
growth
fois que
of
cette désinformation
climate
climatique,
disinformation.
elle
We
est
can see that
utilisée à
this climate
des fins
disinformation
politiques,
is used politically,
mais elle est aussi utilisée
but it's
pour
also used
retarder l'action.
to delay
Et donc
action.
cette
And
discussion qu'on va
so
avoir ce matin
this discussion that we're going to
dans
have
la
this
perspective de
morning
la COP 30
is about
qui arrive au Brésil
the
dans
COP30 that
maintenant
is
seulement 2 semaines.
going to
Je
take
voudrais
place
commencer par
in
vous,
just 2 weeks. I'd like to start
Younes.
with you, please, Kim
Vous
Younes.
présidez
You
un réseau
chair
international,
an
TV5monde,
international
et
network,
qui couvre bien
TV5
entendu
Monde,
toute une
which
série d'enjeux,
covers
le climat
a
et
number
l'environnement
of challenges,
en font
climate,
partie. Vous
the
êtes aussi
environment are
un
part of
média de
those
service
issues, and you're
public
also a
qui fait
media,
bien entendu
public
face
service media,
à certains défis
and
spécifiques. Je voudrais juste, on
I
a eu
would
le
like
temps
to
d'échanger en amont de ce panel, mais
just
que
we
vous
have had
présentiez
the
un peu
chance
le
to
rôle pour vous,
discuss
le
before
rôle des
this
médias, du
panel, but can you just
journalisme,
talk to
et
us about
s'il
your
faut
role, the
d'ailleurs
role of the
distinguer
media, of
les médias du
journalists,
journalisme
and whether we should make a
dans
distinction
cette lutte
between
pour les faits.
the media and journalists in this fight for truth? Thank you very much, Camille, for that question. I will talk about TV5 Monde, but I'd also like to talk to you about the observation that you just made. We're all here because we are realizing that climate disinformation is a massive challenge. We have proof of this on a day-to-day basis. We saw false videos about the devastating storm Melissa, for example, before the storm even happened. So there's a study that was published by 3 NGOs, Cota Climat, Science Feedback, and Data Follow. And what strikes me is the very quick acceleration of this phenomenon over the last few months. There are 2 very interesting pieces of data. There is growth in audiovisual media, and we see that fake news has tripled. And the thing that strikes me is where this false data is coming from, because it's 6 times more present in the media, and in particular on 24-hour news channels, than in the public sphere. So this is very alarming for us, and obviously we have to react. And the question that we're wondering about as an international audiovisual network and multinational is, what can we do about this? Now, I'd like to remind you what TV5 Monde is, because many of you know what this channel is, but you don't necessarily know what our reach is. It's the first generalist media outlet, French-speaking media outlet in the world. It has existed for more than 40 years, and it was founded upon the initiative of a number of donor governments. You have France, Belgium, Switzerland, Canada, Quebec and Monaco, and our purpose is, our aim is to integrate other French-speaking states. We're present in 200 countries, and we reach 400 million households. So we have a very wide market across the globe, and we have a reach which is extremely important in terms of our network distribution. And now what we're trying to do with this media outlet is to offer information, news that is public interest news. We don't have an opinion, we are neutral, we're independent, we're impartial, and this news must be as robust and healthy as possible. And we do this through our multilateralism, because the fact of having a view that takes into in consideration a number of partners, countries with experts, journalists, and figures from different cultural backgrounds, this enables us to have a corpus of information which is extremely precious and valuable. Now, to answer your question, what we're doing to fight against disinformation, we have, obviously, as with all media outlets, we have to debunk fake news. We do this work which takes more and more time, because there is more and more fake news. But what I want to say is that the most important thing for us is to produce quality news. And the best way to fight against disinformation is to produce quality content by experts, produced by journalists, professional journalists. And I'd like to draw your attention to 2 things. What makes us different? as a public interest media? Well, what makes us different and what we can see on the content that you will find on social media is that we have a hierarchy of information. When you have a televised news channel, it's editorialized, it's organized, the content is not presented fairly. And this is key. And the second important thing is that we need to reach our audience. We often wonder whether we should continue to be present on platforms and social media because at the end of the day, that is where most fake news is. I want to say that yes, but we need to find a balance, and that's what we're doing. We've just announced a newspaper for teens, for example, between 15 to 18 years. The objective is to inform that target audience and also to educate them. And to do this, we have to be where young people are.
There's a lot of other topics. Thank you. Yes, we have not too long, so if we move on about opinions and editorialization of information. Laurence Tubiana, you have had many roles as an academic, a diplomat, the president of the European Climate Foundation. In your different roles, you have probably seen misinformation about the climate rising. We are 10 years after climate agreement, and a week before the COP, what do you believe has changed? Yes, thank you. Thank you for organizing this. Thank you for your political reflection. The Paris Peace Forum is a place where we can have an in-depth an in-depth reflection. Today, Donald Trump tweeted that they won the fight against climate change because Bill Gates said that they had to do something different. We are in a cultural battle, an actual cultural struggle, a fight. This misinformation, we've seen that crystallized around climate change. Climate change is within some sort of ideology package with gender, women's rights, science, and this whole package is being misinformed about. 11–12% of these topics that are extremely strategic about climate change. This is not being done randomly, and this is done with political stakes. So I don't want to talk about misinformation anymore, but about propaganda. In the past, this way of trying to catch people's attention with hatred, with emotion, with opposition, it comes to repair people's hearts in a way. It attacks very strategically. When you think about the farmers' manifestations, demonstrations a year and a half ago, for example. The idea is to say that climate does not exist. That's something that has been said many times. It has been said at the United Nations even. And there is a demonization of clean energy, of electrical vehicles, etc. And that supports some strategic interest that is behind that type of disinformation, misinformation. And of course, media are amplifying this misinformation. And we can see what kind of weapons do we have against that. Well, first of all, supporting media that are actually informing. I think when I'm in France Télé, they say information is not an opinion, and that's something that is really beautifully said. Now,
évidemment, je crois qu'il faut que les pays, les gouvernements, et j'espère
I believe that countries, governments, and I hope that's what came from yesterday's discussions, governments need to tackle regulation, not about taxation only, but about how journalists can work, how we support journalists. It is difficult to counterbalance false information. It is important to check the news, to debunk, but it's not enough. And I believe that we need to put a direct relationship between the media and between citizens. We need a debate, a public debate, in order to find this trust that we need. Media need to be associated with processes, with public discussion processes, democratic participation, so as to have this trust and this recognizing the other. Thank you very much for what you said. Something that the President of the Republic said yesterday, that there is this need to attack the system and infrastructures. And we need to tackle this in order to support system and infrastructures. Now I'll switch to English.
Wikimedia supports access to reliable information, notably through its most well-known encyclopedia, which is Wikipedia. And it is proof to a lot that tech companies can also be on the side of knowledge, facts, and science. So can you tell us a little bit of the work that you're doing at Wikimedia on that side? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Camille, and to the forum for inviting me as a representative of the Wikimedia Foundation to speak today. You said the word company, and I would just emphasize that the Wikimedia Foundation, we are the nonprofit NGO that hosts Wikipedia and other volunteer-run platforms. So Wikipedia itself has no employees, and the Wikimedia Foundation was actually created after Wikipedia was started, so that there would be some kind of organization to help fundraise for the computer servers and the lawyers to defend the right of people to create the encyclopedia. So we stand in very sharp contrast to tech companies operating on a for-profit model that really exist primarily to generate maximum profits for their shareholders and investors. We exist only to serve and protect the people who contribute to Wikipedia and other related projects, such as Wikidata, which along with Wikipedia has been named a digital public good by the Digital Public Goods Alliance, recognized by the United Nations. And I hope that you will all agree here that digital public goods, alongside public interest media, are part of a very interdependent ecosystem that is going to sink or swim together. And Wikipedia, after all, is only as reliable as the sources we cite. Wikipedia is not a primary source. The editors determine, the volunteer community of hundreds of thousands of people around the world decide what constitutes a reliable source and what does not, and what belongs on any given Wikipedia page about any topic and what does not. And if there is information that someone puts on a Wikipedia page that is citing a source that editors have deemed to be unreliable or does not cite any source, it is removed. And the foundation, we defend the right of our editors to do this, despite a lot of challenges from a lot of powerful people and governments around the world. So that is a very important difference between Wikipedia and the for-profit tech companies. And as Mark Thompson alluded to and other speakers have alluded to, the tech company's business model is based on targeted advertising, which requires collection of a great deal of data about users so that they can be targeted very specifically with content that is amplified, often algorithmically now with the help of AI, and specific people are targeted with particular messages that are believed by the people targeting these messages to be most acceptable and most likely to be not only to engage with the content, but to find it most provocative and addictive. We do not do any of that. We collect so little data about people who visit Wikipedia, we don't even know how many users we have. We only know how many unique devices connect to the projects. And we collect the absolute minimum of information about the people who contribute to Wikipedia, and we are defending our right to do that despite a lot of well-meaning laws around the world that are trying to force us to collect more user information about contributors around the world in more than 300 languages. And in fact, our Francophone colleagues in Wikimedia France could not be here today because they are at a global meeting of Francophone Wikipedians elsewhere. Another way, as I mentioned, that Wikipedia is different from commercial social media is the people carrying out what is known as content moderation are not staff, and they are not algorithms. They are human beings who are elected from amongst their peers as being trustworthy and credible to enforce the rules that the editors, that the volunteers have set over time. And there are different rules for different topics. So actually the pages that relate to climate science and climate change have much more rigorous rules about what constitutes a reliable source than a page about a movie star. And this is, again, all determined in a very granular, bottom-up way by this community of practice. There are several dozen independent NGOs that are part of the Wikimedia ecosystem that support Wikipedians working across the world in different jurisdictions and different languages on different topics, including climate change. And they are working with funders and other media organizations to improve climate information in multiple languages. And these are the communities that are really working at the coalface, the proverbial coalface of climate justice work. Just one quick example, and we can talk more about more COP-specific things later, but so for example, the African Wikipedian Alliance that is made of Wikipedians from around Africa or African diasporas, we don't know where people are exactly, who have a project that they sought independent funding for, mapping climate justice with open data. So they're working with other open data projects, that some of which are also digital public goods, to help Wikipedia volunteers working across Africa to improve climate science and climate justice related information, not just in English or French, but in their indigenous languages as well, in their mother tongue. So this is just one example of how our communities of practice, and again, this is not directed top down by the foundation. This is coming from the energy of the individual volunteers who believe passionately that people in their countries, their communities, people who speak their languages need more accurate information and are volunteering their time to ensure that this happens.
Thank you so much for the explanation. And there is one word that I think that draws a common thread between the different interventions is the word public. We talk about public service, we talk about public good, we talk about the crucial role between the media and the public. And I think that, you know, this is one thing that we can, I hope, reflect on is the place of the public in all this conversation and how do we go, there's been a lot of the work that we've done at the forum, how do we go outside of the expert bubble or of the researchers or civil society and how we reach that public to, you know, also explain that freedom of expression remains crucial, that we need to find the proper balance, that we need to explain sometimes very complicated and technical issues. So thanks a lot for that. As we said already, we are 2 weeks from COP. In Brazil, and we've seen how Brazil has put information integrity at the top of its international agenda. We're talking about the G20 earlier, and also Brazil, UNESCO, and the UN, which launched the Global Initiative for Information Integrity on climate change that will deliver concrete results in Belém. But I would really, in the less than 10 minutes that we still have your hopes, your wishes, the wish lists that we could add to the COP and to the government will be represented there. What are you hoping to see happening in Belém? And maybe we can go in the same order, starting with you, Kim.
Je vais vous répondre. J'aimerais juste rebondir très rapidement.
I would like to also respond to what Rebecca Mackinnon said. I believe that it is crucial it's about reliable sources, verifying sources, and how we talk, integrating experts for the public. And this is not obvious. For example, the partners that we have for education, where we talk to students, we talk to pupils, and we explain what is reliable source and debunking and checking sources, and it's not an obvious thing for them. So education, understanding, having an educational way of going about it, and how we refer to that throughout our institution, that I believe is crucial as well. Now about the COP30. I believe there are two things that are crucial for us as a network. First of all, we commend this type of initiative because we have overwhelmed with content nowadays, and we need to have this one moment where we unite everyone, people on a high level, for this question for 2, 3, 4 days, the great challenges that we are confronted with for the next few years. We had the conference on oceans a few months back. When I started in France, there were only 7 channels. Today, you have 27 channels. You have all the social media, you have 12 streaming platforms, so you can see how editorialization and emphasizing this or that information is crucial, because otherwise you are completely lost and overwhelmed. The other thing that we try to be attentive about is to link the topics that we need to link. We need to talk about climate change, the issues of climate change, but we also need to talk about what we need as a media. I believe it's also the case for Wikimedia. Producing information is an expensive fact. We need people for fact checking, we need staff, we need training. You said, how can we reach out to the public? We also need to have the right training on how to write a good narrative, how to be able to reach out to people on social media. And our economic model, we depend on the public, where your model is maybe a bit different, but we do depend on the public and on audiences. So these initiatives are very interesting and that we commend these initiatives. Thank you very much. We are running out of time. I believe that the resources question is crucial, and the problem is that disinformation, misinformation is very well financed and very well organized as well. So we need to organize better if we want to be better financed, better organized. Well, since we don't have much time, I would like to focus on what's at stake and the initiative that Brazil took for the G20, having one segment, one topic about misinformation about climate. This is the first time that misinformation about climate will be dealt with at a COP. The UN Global Initiative for Information Integrity on Climate Change.
And I think it's really crucial because it has to be part of the climate governance. It's so evident now when you see that we are entering in a conflict about climate policy, climate change, climate action, denialism. It's not new, but now it has much, much more money and much more strategies than before. So it has been in the past. It's another wave. I'm confident we can be on the upcycle and combat, as we did in the past, by the scientists, by the media, by the information of citizens. And just, I'm trusting citizens because, you know, most people in every country of the world are concerned by climate change. They want action, they want information. So it's a battle between monopoly and citizen in a way for climate change. And that I will say and really support and really support this initiative, which I hope will be a formal part of the COP and a decision on how we condition participation at the COP to people who are trustworthy, who are really trustful and are really giving real information and being accountable of what they say and what they do. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Et en effet, comptez.
Thank you very much. You can count on us for that as well and our UN partners to carry out this agenda on the highest level.
Is it only a question of resources, or do we need to also do what Laurence was saying about the monopoly versus the people?
Well, I couldn't agree more with what Laurence was saying about the people. Certainly in our experience, the energy is completely coming from the communities. And so one example is Wikimedia Brazil. Again, the independent community affiliate based in Brazil is working with affiliates around Latin America. They call themselves the Climate Justice Working Group, and they are among the first grant recipients from UNESCO, working with a range of other UN entities and governments, which is part of a global interdisciplinary network to socialize findings and reveal climate misinformation, and to help, again, citizens figure out how to fill the gaps, to bring in the correct information, to participate in the reporting and translation and curation of reliable information and sources. Because we're running out of time, I just want to say one other thing about policy, which is very important, because I know that the independent media, the public interest media fund is also concerned with policy. And it's very important that as governments are thinking about policy and regulation, and not just funding for activities, but what to require of tech companies and others to address the harms and the amplification of misinformation. Make sure that you're not catching the dolphins in the net. So there's a lot of discussion about regulating big tech. I don't disagree with the fund about the need for smart regulation, but I hope my call to governments and to our allies is be sure you apply what we call the Wikipedia test to your regulatory and policy proposals. Make sure that your proposed law or treaty is not going to impose obligations on public interest technology, public interest digital public goods like Wikipedia that would force us to surveil our users, force us to intervene in community governance. That will not be good for the public interest. And so we need to make sure that regulation is smart and nuanced and not counterproductive. Thank you.
Thank you so much. In conclusion, I think that we can agree on one, maybe last word, balance. How do we rebalance the powers between big tech companies and the people? How do we balance the necessary regulation and the preservation of freedom of expression and innovation and the very good work that you're doing at the Wikimedia Foundation? At the Forum on Information and Democracy, we will soon release an interim report from our work stream on climate disinformation and other environmental issues. We hope that this will also bring some food for thought to COP, and I hope that we will try to strike this balance. Thank you so much to the three of you for being with us this morning for not only a theoretical discussion, but a very practical one, and we hope that we will bring all this to COP, and we'll now leave the room to the second panel on AI and information integrity. Thank you so much.
Camille and distinguished panelists. That was a fantastic panel. So as Camille noted, we'll now introduce the next panel, which discusses the link between information integrity and AI and the future of reliable information. Can I please welcome the moderator, Nishant Lalwani, CEO of the International Fund, to the stage, and the other panelists. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This should be a simple conversation, AI and reliable information, not one we're concerned about. I'm Nishant Lalwani, and I'm delighted to moderate the panel of these very, very thoughtful thinkers today. Joining us, we have Luc Duckendorf, who serves as Ambassador for Cybersecurity and Digitalization of the Netherlands. Besides cyber diplomacy, digitalization for Luxembourg. This is the second time I'm introducing you in 2 days, so yeah, 1 out of 2, apologies. Besides cyber diplomacy, human rights and security policies, worked on development cooperation and multilateral diplomacy. It's also my pleasure to introduce Melanie Huey, Chief Executive Officer of Luminate, which is a global philanthropic organization ensuring that technology upholds human rights, equity and social justice. Next, we have Paula Maraglia, founder and CEO of Momentum, which is a global initiative based in Brazil, advancing the conversation on how technology can strengthen journalism and sustainable media ecosystems. And then we have Dr. Chico Guitao, Chief Executive of Kala, a digital innovation company driving transformation across Africa's key sectors, from health and agriculture to energy and education. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Now, artificial intelligence, and especially generative agentic AI, is creating a range of opportunities, but I think many of us at this conference are concerned about some of the risks that are raised by AI. We are going to talk about the opportunities. We are going to talk about what positive action we can take. But I'd like to start with some of the risks and concerns so we can acknowledge them. Paola, I'm going to come to you first. You founded 2 digital-first newsrooms. You now lead a globally important digital think tank studying the intersection of journalism and tech and policy based in Brazil. How is AI impacting the viability of journalism?
Thanks, Nishan, and good morning. I think in many ways I would like to highlight 3 of them. I think the first one is a very practical one. It's something that has been called traffic apocalypse. So the fact that now we were already very subjected to our distribution was subjected to tech platforms. It became even more with AI. What does that mean? It means that today what happens is that you can put a question, a prompt, and you get an answer that is a mix of several sources, including news organization sources, that will give you an answer without asking you, without a need for a click. So what's happening is that media organizations, they don't have traffic anymore. People don't need to visit the websites to get informed. Of course, the quality is it's lower than the quality if you were to read that piece of news, but it's making people not go to the websites, and therefore media has no longer ways of the traditional ways of having revenue. So and this is uniting all of us, digital natives, legacy, global south, global north, in one crisis. I would say, so this is the first one. The other one that I would like to highlight is the impact on the markets. Brazil, for instance, is already very traditional and concentrated media market. What we're about to see is an even further consolidation of those markets with a greater risk of media capture, and capture by interests such as political, religious, commercial. What we're seeing is that a lot of the media markets organizations are now relying on advertisement coming from sports betting companies. I don't need to tell you how harmful this could be. And finally, I think I would like to close with the nature of the relationship between media organizations and the tech platforms. It is characterized by structural dependence, and it became like that over the years. So the platforms they are the intermediaries between us and our readership. They control distribution with zero transparency, and we have no agency over our content. We depend on them to distribute that. It's also a relationship that is marked by a huge asymmetry of power. We're dealing with the companies that have unprecedented power in human history. On the other side, we have media organizations who are under deep financial pressure, who are facing a historical crisis. So you can imagine the asymmetry of power, and as a result of that, we have licensing agreements that are being signed between AI companies and media organizations that are extremely unfair, that pick specific players and does not favor the entire ecosystem.
Thank you so much, Paola. Chico, Paola's talking about having no agency, and you, in previous speeches, have said that if Africans don't shape the narrative, that they will be erased from the world of AI. Can you tell us more? How is that erasure happening?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this question. So last year, 2023, just at the rise of ChatGPT, a friend of mine from actually University of Oxford ran a study asking Mid-Journey ChatGPT produce a picture of an African doctor treating a white child. Several prompts later, it still didn't do. And the closest it did is bringing a sangoma. I hope you know, like a medicine man with like traditional attire. But worse than that, it brought a giraffe as a doctor. And who knows why a giraffe? Because we have a famous movie that was made out of Africa called Madagascar. And the giraffe there was a doctor. recently, like 2 months ago, our designer was not available. So I thought, oh, generative AI has progressed so far. It can generate for me a map of Africa with a few of our countries highlighted for a presentation I was going to make. And I did that. And oh my God, I did prompts in the top 5 products, and none of them got it right. But when I posted it on LinkedIn saying, please retry this, maybe it's just my pro version that is not doing this, the cartographers, the guys who actually make maps, say that not only was a generative AI not able to identify the countries, the mapping of the countries within Africa was wrong. Egypt was somewhere else, Morocco was somewhere else, Rwanda was somewhere different, and the mapping, the actual geography of the countries had been redone. And somebody was saying, oh, we are back to 1890 when the big struggle for Africa happened. And if this is what Gen AI is doing in 2025, it means that a lot of data sets that define who Africa is and why Africa exists are not taken care of. So Africa has to take a more proactive process in not only defining Gen AI's conversation with Africa, but also building models for and from Africa. And we say this, we have 5 foundational ways that we are looking at this. We are looking at this from talent, compute, data sets, market, and governance. And I'll start with governance because of the previous panel. We need to make sure that our policymakers actually understand what governance of AI means. And I use the word governance of our regulation because we need a bit of governance. We need guardrails around AI to protect our data, to protect our people, but not regulate it at the expense of innovation. That's number one. We need talent. And I'll come to this in terms of erasure. So the biggest narrative right now around Africa is there's no African talent to build AI. But Europe, and I'm happy I'm sitting in Paris, is being run by North Africa. Especially Paris, a big chunk of their AI talent is from North Africa. This data to back me up, yeah? If you go to each of the big labs in the US, they have a big chunk of African talent that are working there. So there is talent in the diaspora, but more than that, we have enough talent on the African continent. We just called out a call for African women who are doing AI research. We got 700 applications of PhD and master's level researchers. So there is talent. So we have to start doing this narrative, but we can't do it by just talking. We have to do it by doing. And so my challenge to my African friends and anybody who's working on the African continent, interested in African continent, is do. Because I'll come here on this panel and say this, but if I have no tangible results or data that I'm talking about, it will not work. And finally is data sets. I'll talk to other things later on, but data sets is very important for Africa is because only 2% of African data sets are informing the current Gen AI work. 2%. These are continent with more than 2,300 languages. We only have 40 of our languages on any Gen AI tool. It means that anything that you see on Gen AI is only 2% of Africa. And we have to change that. So anything you Google about Africa is actually more accurate than anything you found on Gen AI. If you go to any Gen AI tool, any of them, and we've tested both the American and the Chinese models, every single one of them are getting the facts about Africa wrong, mostly because they're not informed by most of our data sets. So we need to deliberately collect data around language, but also most importantly, and I keep telling these people, and I wanted to talk about OpenAI yesterday, it's more than translation, it's about context and culture. We are a rich continent with diverse languages, diverse cultures, very rich. And if we don't capture that in Gen AI, Satya said that Gen AI is the representative of true humanity, but it is not for Africa. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for those powerful statistics and stories. Melanie, Illuminate's focused on the impact of technology on society. So how is emerging tech, and especially AI, how is it impacting information integrity? How is it impacting power systems and governance systems?
Thanks, Nishant. I mean, I think it's very clear to all of us that today we live in an attention economy. And this is an attention economy where the scarce resource is our attention. And a few private companies really are competing for it, to control it. They're doing that through using AI algorithms. It's a kind of concentration of power that we're seeing right now that is unprecedented, and it is eroding our human rights. We've been talking a lot in the past 2 days about how it's eroding our democracies. So the challenge that we're really seeing is that these systems are rewarding engagement over truth and trust. Their question, Nishant, they've captured the market, as Paula has been talking about, really demonetizing journalism. And this is probably going to be further exacerbated with AI integrated search. Gen AI, as we kind of can see the direction is going, will be supercharging also the creation and dissemination of mis and disinformation. That's another topic that has been really a constant one, a drumbeat in this conference. We're seeing it, the examples that the last panel gave around how it has real-life implications on climate change, where the IPCC, which is the UN's top scientific body, has classified disinformation as a recognized threat to climate action. So this is pretty bad news, because just last week the UN Secretary General has told us that, we're surpassing the 1.5 degree threshold already. It's something that Luminate's learned from working with different partners, grantee partners who are working on this topic, like AI Forensics or Global Witness, who have reverse engineered basically the algorithms to understand the influence networks and how they work, how they spread this kind of climate misinformation online at scale. There are many benefits. Shiko was talking about some of the potential for AI in the world, and we know fact-checking, for example, right? It could be really, really helped by this. But for that to really be true, we have to kind of contend with the fact that as long as the digital platforms are allowed to profit from essentially surveillance capitalism, information integrity will be at risk. And with it, trust is really at risk. And that really handicaps us from solving all the problems that we're in these spaces talking about. And that's something that we really have to contend with and to work on together.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Luc, your fellow panelists are calling for regulation. Everyone seems to be calling for, even the tech companies seem to be calling for regulation. And many governments, including Luxembourg, are thinking deeply about how to do this. What are some of the barriers here? Are they political? Are they technical? Are they institutional? What are the barriers to doing this?
Thanks very much, Nishant. So there's a lot of them. I think some of them are indeed political. I've wanted to be a good civil servant for once and go from the more simple to the more complex ones. And I think the simple ones we more or less all agree on around the table. It's a question of technological and AI literacy, that civil servants and politicians and other decision makers need to be trained in how these systems work. There's a lot of training available. There's the brilliant Finnish Elements of AI course, and we've got plenty of other initiatives. Then there's the issue of in-house capacities for really knowing how to make all of this work. France and Luxembourg and many other countries have Gov Tech Labs that essentially function to make sure that we have data scientists who know how to operate these systems well. But I think there's a huge gap, especially for countries in the global south. And there's multilateral solutions from the ITU, the UNDP, and many others to work on that. And then there's also the issue of having a clear strategy, and most of us do have one. But there is a bigger issue as well, and that is really the entire layer of preserving the ability to think critically about this, that governments and civil servants need always to act in the public interest and remember what their part of the social contract is, which is to make sure people live safe and happy lives, and that governments need to protect, respect and fulfill all human rights, economic, social and cultural, and civil and political, and also the right to a clean and healthy environment. And this is very hard because we've had about 45 years of neoliberal ideology seeping into all corners of government, and we have this kind of learned helplessness from governments that would rather outsource solutions than build them in-house. And there's a lot of brilliant literature about this. I think I wrote down Mariana Mazzucato. She wrote a lot of good books about that.
Thank you so much. I'm going to move now to some of the opportunities and practical solutions. Shiko, you talked about only 2% of Africa is really represented online. What do we need to do to actually chart a digital future for Africa to ensure that AI models accurately represent and respond to the reality of the context?
Awesome. It's not working? Is it? Okay. Thank you for that question. I already mentioned the 5 pillars, but the biggest one is what the ambassador has spoken about. We need to create massive awareness around what AI can and should be doing. And I always say there is a huge spectrum of AI talent. There is the AI talent, the PhDs and researchers like myself, but there is also the people who actually need to go out and collect the data sets and label them and ensure that they are available, the data scientists who are going to clean them up. So there's that spectrum that needs to happen. And there's little focus on the lower card of that. We're trying to get PhDs out of the door as much as possible. But most importantly is the populace. That's what we call the market. I always give an example of my dad. My dad is a Christian pastor, and every time I tell him what I do, because it changes every 3 years, I told him, we are doing this AI thing, Dad. And he's like, what is AI? So I tried to explain to him. I said, oh my God, that is the Antichrist. We are not doing that. And I said, no, Dad, this is how it is. Then he got an opportunity to use the Oculus and walk through the Bible using it. And he was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I can actually experience the Bible as it was in the time of Jesus. And that sold him for him. And what I always tell people with that example is that people need to understand AI in their context. When I talk to ministers and cabinet, I tell them, think of it, how many doctors do you have in your country? There's a 1 to 10,000 ratio in some African countries of doctors. Can you imagine if that doctor can be able to serve 100 people every day without being exhausted because they're able to be facilitated by AI? And it's that critical understanding is the base. We are going to try and build the models and stuff, but that critical understanding of what AI is at the general level is important. But also being able to capture context, being able to capture the context of the doctor operating in a very resource-constrained environment, the pastor who needs to be able to show to his audience that he is not the Antichrist, right? Or the teacher who needs to demonstrate that this is what osmosis looks like in our world, not in the American world, right? That is what needs to happen. I always say awareness, number 2. Number 2, there is that deliberate action of collecting the data. It's expensive, it's hard, no one is wanting to do it. The big tech will not invest in it if they don't have an incentive to do it. And they don't have at this point to do it because Africa is yet to become a viable market for them. But we know in 2050, Africa will be the world's workforce. So the people who are willing to do it now needs to be able to be investing for the future. You need to do it now for the future. And I always say, you have to think in 100 years' time. If in 100 years' time, Africa will still be the largest continent. And if you want to start to be making money, even post your lifetime as an organization, start investing now in that data set, in that market, and building the right type of infrastructure for the African continent. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Shiko is talking about infrastructure, about data collection. Paula, what policies do we need to build a stronger future for journalism in this age of AI?
So I come from a country with 200 million inhabitants, and the country has a universal public free health system that goes from the federal government to the more than 5,000 municipalities in Brazil. So I have no reason to believe that we will be able to create policies that can transform people's lives when it comes to information integrity. And I'm saying this because we address tech as it was too complex to be addressed by public policy, and I cannot believe that. I think there are some opportunities. Brazil is on the verge of approving an AI bill that has a copyright provision that can benefit media organizations immediately by ensuring that they will be rightfully paid by all the tech platforms using their content that until now they are using without fair pay. I think what we've been learning is that legislation is key for us to be able to create what I call productive friction. We need to put pressure on tech platforms. That's how they negotiate. That's how we change the terms of the negotiations. I think that we also need to take into account that our markets are extremely relevant. Countries like Brazil, South Africa, and Indonesia are extremely relevant markets, and we are working together by collaborating on different fronts: regulatory fronts, on tech development fronts, but also in terms of what we can learn from each other in terms of competition commissions or competition inquiries. There's a lot to be learned from international cooperation. And I also want to mention the opportunity for a new multilateralism. I think these are global issues that need a new multilateralism that is led by the Global South, but also a multilateralism that is honest about its interests, its goals, it's honest about who is welcome and who is not, and actually give us the leadership that we deserve, since we know how the world as it is right now, and we know that solutions are coming from our countries. So they have the potential not only to be local solutions, but to be global solutions. Otherwise, we're talking about performative multilateralism, and I can tell you that we're not interested in that. Finally, I would like to mention the public infrastructure dimension. We talk a lot about public infrastructure. Public infrastructure is not something that you wake up one day and you have it. It's a long-term investment and is immediately linked to digital sovereignty. I think that we understood how these things are linked more and more, especially in the current geopolitical environment. So I think it's time for our countries to believe not only that they need to build this kind of infrastructure, but they can. And they can even further if they are learning from each other.
Thank you, Paola. Really inspiring words, and I really couldn't agree more with those calls to action. Melanie, Luminate, has prioritized systems change work historically over quick fixes. You were the earliest supporter of the International Fund, for example. We're very grateful for that. Can you talk more about why you take that approach?
Well, let's start with the world we want to see. We want people, especially marginalized people, to have their rights upheld, to have voice and agency in this world that is increasingly digital, as we've been saying. And so clearly there are no quick fixes to this kind of global problem. Our work at Luminate is at the intersection of tech and human rights and social justice. And so we think of our approach as this ecosystem approach. And I really enjoyed the interventions of my panelists. It's something that we value, investing in this kind of infrastructure. They've both given examples of this, a bigger and stronger field made of different actors in different spaces that are really redistributing power in this information economy, in this attention economy. And that's the kind of thing we do, engaging with quite a range, including governments of different actors that can help us as a collective with this more resilient, solutions-oriented infrastructure, where we know we have to learn and adapt because some of the things we're trying now may or may not work as we navigate together. There is also something about philanthropic risk capital here that is hard for public funding, for example, to do. And so besides this long-term investment in this infrastructure, we're also thinking about the tactics that we could help apply, trying things like litigation to uphold some of the regulations that has been put in place, movement building work that is much more proximate to the ground with the people we work with, and investing in kind of emergent groups and emergent tactics. There is also something that's more than just funding, right? We know that that these problems need resources and that we have to grow the field for attention of this in a world that's got a lot of competing kind of polycrises. And it is, rather than competing with those, kind of convening and putting together all the coalitions of people willing to work on this together, essentially for what I said earlier about upholding people's rights and agency. And IFPIM shares so much of that systems change lens, that DNA, and that was why when IFPIM was kind of founded and accepted, we were really delighted to be one of the earliest supporters of this initiative to grow the global infrastructure. And this was a really missing piece that IFPIM brought to this, kind of the coordinated long-term investment in information integrity that focus on low and middle income contexts that we also work very much in and really need to prevent the erasure of. And the strategy is also to evolve and help the system as we navigate this future.
Thank you so much, Melanie. And I think, to thank you again, that vision really did come to bear. President Macron yesterday was saying that IFPIM and the Forum for Information and Democracy represent kind of the missing infrastructure in the information integrity space that was needed. So I'm glad we're getting there. Luke, Paolo was talking about how multilateralism needs to change. From your perspective, how should multilateral cooperation seek to safeguard information integrity?
Thanks, Nishant. So I think I'll start with another point we all agree on, and that's that multilateralism is indispensable. It is essentially humanity's response to dealing with problems that are too hard for any one single country to tackle, the problems without passports, as Kofi Annan used to call them. And it is an approach of collective action that is we've not found an alternative to. It's also an approach of collective intelligence. We've built an incredibly important corpus of knowledge, but also of international law, both hard law and soft law, that helps us govern the world, and that should help us do so in a way that's just and fair to everyone. Unfortunately, it isn't, because power still finds ways to game the system, but at least the international law is on our side. It also plays a very important role of speaking truth to power, and whether that's the Secretary General who tells leaders into their faces, you're failing, the world is boiling, and we've passed 1.5 degrees, or whether it's Francesca Albanese calling the world to order about genocide in Gaza. This is what we have the UN for, to tell us the hard truth we would otherwise not hear. And then there's a very large framework for international cooperation that we have beyond the UN, even although UNESCO was the first to move on AI and its first recommendation in 21. The OECD that we have in Paris here as well has built a lot of things that we use. The Vilnius Convention of the Council of Europe, discussions at General Assembly, the Security Council, the Human Rights Council, and then also the diplomatic institutions and secretariats that uphold them and that do the very patient work of institutional memory building, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights and many others. And then there's, of course, an essential role also for working with other constituencies, with academia, with civil society, track 1, but also track 1.5 and track 2 diplomacy. And I think we have all that, we just need to use it.
Thank you so much. We're running out of time, unfortunately, so we won't get to our last question on the future of journalism, but we'll invite you back to talk more about that. I want to thank our panelists. I learned a lot from this discussion. A few of the things that I learned that really struck me. First of all, Paola talked about how this is an issue that unites the global north and the global south. And that actually leaders from the global south may even have more credibility on this issue because they've lived through it and built resilience. Shiko, I learned from you that AI has more animated references when it comes to LLM training. I mean, the Madagascar giraffe example really stuck with me than it does for true African grounding and training data. Luke, your comments around kind of learned helplessness really struck home, and the need to balance the different types of benefits coming from AI, the different types of human rights that are at risk here. Melanie, the way you framed how philanthropic capital can be really additive to public capital, how it can be used for litigation and other things, how it can be used more flexibly, that's certainly something we've benefited from. Paola, I love the term productive friction. We need to create this productive friction so that there is something to negotiate with. Maybe a very different approach to the one that journalists used 20 years ago when social media came about. But the favorite thing I learned is that the way you explain AI to a pastor is by calling it the Antichrist. Thank you for that, Chico. I think that's a powerful metaphor. This is the end of today's discussion here on stage A. I will say that there are some important conferences coming up in the near future on disinformation in Denmark on the 11th and 12th of November. The Danish government and international media support are hosting a conference, the Copenhagen Conference on Information Integrity. Will be there and very much encourage you to as well. Thank you to my panelists and to everyone who joined today.